continue in our series today, and I just want to prompt you to keep your eyes forward, no elbowing or touching or pointing at anybody else, okay? Here's my question. How many of you know somebody who is very critical? Anybody? Anybody know somebody? Now, the rest of you you're hanging out with good company then, all right. How many of you, and don't answer this, but how many of you think that every time I ask these stupid questions, it really bothers you and you're wondering why? Okay, that's you today. We're going to be talking about you today. This is going to be helpful for you today. We're in a series where we're talking about our words because we are powerful people because words that we speak, they are powerful. The words that have been spoken to us, the words that have been spoken over us, and the words that have been spoken about us shape our lives, the direction and the course of our life. We're powerful because our words have the potential to impact the direction and quality of the lives of other people. You can put that up on the screen. Our words have that same type of potential to make that kind of impact in the lives of others. Now, as we're going through this series, my goal is not just to teach us to manage our behavior better. That's not the goal. My goal is really to go to the source of the problem, the source of the issue, which is our hearts, and to ask God. So I want you guys to lean in. We have our youth in here. I'm so glad. Lean in this morning because the goal is to go to the source of the issue, which is our hearts, and to ask God to change our hearts so that we can do a better job of controlling our mouths and of speaking with wisdom instead of a lot of what we see. Now, if you're 20, how many of you are under the age of 20? You're a Gen Z or you're under 22? Go ahead. In the back, raise your hands. You know, how old are you? We get licenses, raise your hands. Raise them high. Come on, raise them high. Go like that. Okay, under 20. How many of you are 22 to 37? 22 to 37. All right, that's good. How many of you just don't know? Okay, because I'm getting like, I think. If you're a millennial or if you're a Gen Z, this is so important. I heard this when I think it was in my 30s. I heard Pastor Jim LaFoon say this. He said that what you, in your 20s, 30s, and 40s, what you sow or what you fail to deal with, they will come back, those seeds will come back to sprout in your 50s and in your 60s. When I heard that in my 20s and 30s, I took it seriously, and I began to go through the garden of my heart and kind of weed up things. And let me just say, in my 50s now, I can tell you that is totally true. That is totally true. Those things that we fail to deal with, they don't just disappear. They may go dormant, but they will resurface, good or bad. So let me just encourage you, especially if you're in your 20s and your 30s and in your 40s, be aware of what's going on in your heart. Take it seriously and weed out the garden of your heart because those things that we fail to deal with, they will come to sprout. How many of you in your 50s and 60s, for good or bad, you can say that's true? Anybody in here? All right, just surprising, some of us. How many of you are 50 or 60? Okay, I just want to make sure you knew. So we start to forget things too as we get older. But it's so true. So what we're talking about is and to get this right now is going to be so helpful. Today we're going to talk about criticism. Today we're going to talk about criticism. And I'm not just talking about the kind of criticism that, somebody actually is concerned about you and they want to see you become better, the kind of constructive criticism that we give. We need that. I need that. And I'm so thankful for the people in my life that gives me constructive criticism, that helps me see the things that I can't see so that I can become a better version and become the person that God wants me to be. Thankful for that. What I am talking about today is the critical, is the I know better, is the tear down, is the oftentimes sarcastic, maybe even a little cynical, harsh, judgmental criticism that we see so often in our culture, right? We see it on Twitterverse, we see it in Instagram, we see it in Snapchat, we see it in the world, all around us in the news and in the media. There is so much harsh criticism around us. That's what I'm talking about today. So this is going to really help us, not only as individuals, but as people, because this thing has the potential to do significant damage. And as I'm talking about this, some of you, I know you're going, man, thank God. I finally got my husband to come to church and my wife to come to church. I'm so glad he's talking about this. Or I can't wait. My boss ain't here, but I'm going to send them an anonymous podcast link to this series. This series is called what? Me. Everybody say it with me. Me and my big mouth. Not me and their big mouth, me and my big mouth, right? So here's what I want us to do. As you're listening to this message, can we just take our lives and our mouths to God and say, okay, God, how am I with what is being spoken? Not, I wish somebody else were here for this. This is about us this morning. Let's take it and receive it for us. If we get this right, this will be a game changer. So here's what it says in Proverbs to start us off this morning. And in Proverbs, oftentimes there's a contrast between two opposing things. Here's what the wise man in Proverbs says. Some people, they make cutting remarks, but the words of the wise bring healing. Okay, so the wise man in Proverbs says there are two different kind of people. One, they cut, they hurt, they criticize, they tear down other people with their words. The other kind of person speaks with wise behavior, and in their wisdom, they build up, they lift up, they don't tear down, they actually build up other people. Two different kind of people. And maybe in your mind already, you're getting a picture of those two different kind of people. You know that person that builds up with their words, and you know that person. In my mind, immediately comes this relative of mine. She's no longer with us. She's gone on to be with the Lord, but she was the most critical person I have ever met. And I thought it was funny. As a teenage kid, I just made fun of it. And so every summer I would go home and visit, and she would always say, you're too dark. She would all the time, you're too dark. And I love going to the beach, so I go to the beach all summer. My goal was to get dark. And so she would come and she would say, too dark, too dark. Her favorite word was inútil, which in Spanish means useless. That's inútil. You're inútil. She would everything was inútil. Everything was useless. One time it was so funny. We went to eat over her house, and our family had just had a big meal. Now, you know this would happen in local culture too, right? You got to eat the food that is presented to you. Otherwise, it is disrespecting. So we were shoving as much food as we could in our mouths, and I think one of us was purging in the bathroom and then going, no, we weren't doing that. But we were just trying to do that, and she was so disappointed with how little food we ate. She actually called somebody else to criticize us to somebody else that we were over there, and I could hear her speaking and saying, they're over here and they're not even eating my food, and I cooked this meal, and we're like, no, we're trying. When we had 3 kids, we went to announce the birth of our 3rd child, and this was her congratulations. No more kids, no more kids, no more. So I told her, hey, look, we're going to at least have 5. So I think we had 5 kids just to help her with that. Yeah. Anyway, we did have 5 kids. So maybe somebody comes to mind already that is really good at finding fault, at picking people apart, at always looking for finding the negative rather than being able to see the positive or the beauty. And that's what we're talking about today. And so Proverbs says there are people who make cutting remarks, and then there are those wise people who bring healing. Now here's the problem with criticism. The problem is none of us really like it, do we? Nobody likes criticism. However, as much as we don't like it, and as much as we can see it when other people are doing it, it's really hard to see it when we do it. True? It's so hard. And the reason why is because we just feel justified when we do it. I mean, if those people weren't so stupid, if they didn't spend their money so frivolously, if they only raised their kids like me, if they only did business like I do, but bottom line is we feel superior, like our way is the right way, and we know better. God's got a wonderful plan for your life, but I've got a better plan for your life, and if you don't do it my way, then I'll talk about the way you dress, I'll talk about the way you look, I'll talk about the pictures that you post on Instagram, I'll talk about the way you spend your money, and I know you don't have money to spend, so why are you spending money on that? And we just go on, and we can go on, and we can go on, and we can go on, right? None of us here, but I'm talking about all the people out there that we're thinking about. They can do that. We can do that. This is not a new problem. This is a problem. This is an issue that has been around for the longest of time. In fact, Paul is communicating that something that Jesus said, and here's what Paul is recommunicating to these people. He says this, for the whole law can be summed up in this one command. Love your neighbor as yourself. And in other words, here's what he's saying. If you want to be a Jesus follower, then do this. Love your neighbor as yourself. And love has a practical application. It's not just a feeling. It means with your word, I'm speaking about words, with our words, use our words to love people. And then he goes on to say, love, but don't do this. And then he says, but if you're always biting and devouring one another, watch out. Be aware of destroying one another. And so Paul is creating this very specific picture. If you've ever seen animals fight each other, dogs or cats, we got this cat that is very protective of our yard and oftentimes gets into the cat fights with neighbor cats. It might look something like this in Paul's context. If you're biting and devouring one another, if you're barking at, if you're tearing each other apart, you're destroying not only individuals, but you're destroying the community. And God is not just concerned about individuals, He's concerned about the community of Jesus people that He's creating. And so Paul is saying to the community of Jesus people, love one another with your words. Don't bite and devour one another with your words. In fact, watch out. Watch out, because with your criticism, you might be tearing down the spouse that you love. You might be hindering the intimacy that you really should be experiencing together with your spouse. Because by your criticism, you might be building a wall between you and your children because of your harsh and judgmental attitude and words that are coming out of your mouth. Because you might be destroying the people in your workplace and the team that you're a part of. You might be unraveling that because of your criticism. Because of your criticism, you might not have confidence to share your faith in Jesus Christ. Because the people in your workplace know that you're critical about everything and anything. And so every time you start to open your mouth about Jesus, they just go, that's just one of those hypocrite Christians. So what if our criticism was doing all of that? That's why Paul says, don't bite, don't devour, watch out, be careful, because when you're critical, you will destroy the people around you and you will destroy the community around you. So be careful. Be careful. So as we're speaking these words and as we're talking about this, when I preach a message, that, number one, I believe in. I believe in the Bible, but it's with conviction. But number two, I don't come here to cast stones. I come here most often, if I had a Bic, I'd light it and say, I'm Gregg, and I was a super critical dude. And over the process of time and of lots of failure, God is humbling me so that I'm no longer the super critical dude I was when I was very young. And I'm not completely done, but I'm on my journey to becoming the kind of person that we're going to talk about today, and I hope you'll desire this as well. Now, Paul is going to write something, and we're going to read something together, and he's speaking to the community of followers of Christ. So this would be like Paul coming to us as a church, and here's what he says in Ephesians 4, and this is where we're going to spend most of our time this morning. As a prisoner of the Lord, then, I urge you. And so Paul has this urgency inside of him. He's really concerned about God's people. He says, I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling that you received. And so, oftentimes when we read the Bible and we see the word you, we think that God is speaking to an individual. Most of the time when God says you, He's actually speaking to a community of people. And so God didn't send His Son Jesus just to die for us as individuals so that we would be saved from sin. God sent His Son to die for us as individuals so that He could create a community of people. So this is really important. It's not just you, the individual, that He's talking to. It's you all. It's all of us. He's talking to all of us. And with this urgency, He's pleading with them. And He's saying, I want you all together to live a life worthy of Christ. Not just you as an individual. I want you as a community of people. And there was this one thing that was destroying their ability to do this that He's going to address. And the one thing was disunity. Disunity, divisive actions, divisive speech, divisive attitudes and activities were dividing this community. And Paul is really concerned about it because he knows Jesus didn't just come for the individual. Jesus came to create a people. And so he's really concerned. And so he says this, I want you to be completely humble and gentle. And what he's going to do is just describe what we as Christ followers should be like, because Jesus is transforming our lives. I want you to be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. In other words, become more like Jesus, not just as an individual, but with each other, right? And then he says, make every effort then to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. So Paul is brilliant. Here's what he does. He teaches them theology. He teaches them about God, and he says, because God is this way, you guys should be this way. And so then he goes on to tell them, there's one Spirit, there's one Lord, there's one baptism, there's one faith. There's just one. There's not many factions or sects, there's one. So you are supposed to be one people, one baptism, one Lord, one Jesus, one faith. Be united together and fight for that unity. And so he goes on to tell them this. He says, so I tell you this, and I insist on it in the Lord, that you must no longer live as the Gentiles do in the futility of their thinking. And so he's not saying, I don't want you to be like those people. He's saying, he's referring to their past. And he's saying, remember when you lived life without God. Remember how you lived back then. Remember how that actually played itself out. Your lack of faith in God led to a lack of consideration for one another and disrupted your community. Remember that? And he goes on to describe what that looks like. He says, you were darkened in your understanding. You were separated from the life of God because you were ignorant and your hearts were hardened, and having lost all sensitivity, and you gave yourselves over to sensuality, and you indulged in every kind of impurity, and you were full of greed. And so he describes this downward spiral of sin. He says, look, first it started when you were just stubborn in your heart. And that stubbornness of heart, it led to a darkened mind. And that darkened mind led to a deadened soul. And that deadened soul led to just reckless behavior. You just cast off restraint. You didn't care. You didn't care how you treated yourself, and you didn't care how you treated each other. And when you did that, you divided this community that God created and gave his life for. So that's the theological picture. So the practice, okay, Greg, where are you going with this? So then Paul, he gets very practical, and he says, because that's how you used to live, you're no longer that anymore. I don't want you to do that. Live this way. And he gives us instruction about the words that we use. And this is really important. This would be a great scripture. Even if you never, if you go, I don't really read the Bible, this would be a really helpful one to memorize. Because our words not only direct the course and quality of our life, but they also have an impact on the lives of others. And so here's these words that I think are just so powerful. So he says, as we go on here, practically, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building up others according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. How many of you already gone, that's impossible? It's a tough one, right? Listen to this though. He says, do not let come out. Now that's a really weird phrasing of it. Basically what he's saying is, this thing wants to come out of you. You can't let it come out of you. How many of you have ever saw something come out that you really didn't want to come out, but it was too late because the words, and you're trying to reel it back in and it's too late. It's going out there and it is like a car that has no brakes and no steering banging against people's lives, and you can kind of see it in their face as your words are hitting. Paul is saying your words have this potential and they want to come out. Don't let them come out. You have to control this thing. And the way he describes it is unwholesome, which doesn't do justice to the word. In the Greek, the picture is of rottenness. Rotten, putrefying fruit or something. About 25 years ago, I lived in, when Chris and I first got married, we lived in Manoa. And we lived in a home that the owner had actually built on the side of the house. And he failed to actually seal the house to the rock. So we had all kind of mice and centipedes and different things like that, just kind of finding a place in our home. I remember this one period of time where there was this smell that, have you ever been hit like in a certain area by the smell of death? Something has died in or around your home, and whenever you walk past that window, you're like, it slaps you. There's just a rottenness that slaps you. In fact, not only does it slap you, it gets on you. If you sit there and try and figure out where that thing is coming from, I remember going on campus and then somebody would say, dude, what's up? And I'm like, what? What's up? And then like, you smell like I don't even know what that is. What is that? It's not even BO. It's like, I don't know. What is that? The death of smell clings to you. And Paul is giving this picture. So here's what happened, just to fill in that story. There was this smell. We searched the fridge. We were living with a bunch of guys, so obviously there's going to be putrefying food in there. It wasn't the putrefying food. It wasn't underneath the fridge. It wasn't around. We searched everything. And for a few weeks, we searched and searched and searched. And then finally, one of the students had the bright idea to actually get up on the counter and look on top of the cabinets, and there was a dead, decaying mouse. And it stank. It didn't stink, it stank to high heaven. And everything it touched with its rottenness stank. And until we got that thing out, and many Febrezes and Lysols, it just wreaked havoc. Paul is basically saying, don't let rotten words come out of your mouth, because when they do, they cling to people, and you have no idea how long it lasts and how much damage it does to their soul. So don't use your words of criticism to tear people down. On the other hand, only things that are good for, that are helpful for, building others up according to their need. Not according to you getting your way or manipulating them to do what you want them to do. According to their need, use your words to build them up, that it may benefit. And that word benefit is the word grace. It's charis. It means give grace. Your words, God will use your words to be a grace gift to somebody else when you seek to benefit them and to build them up with your words. Powerful, isn't it? Come on, powerful, right? I mean, this is good truth. So he says, do not let, you're going to want to, but don't let it happen, unwholesome words come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful for building up others, that according to their need, that those who hear it may benefit from it. Those who hear it may receive the gift of grace. Rotten words stick, don't they? You and I, we probably have no idea how much damage some rotten words that we could speak could do, right? How much in our families, how much in our workplaces, how much with our kids, how much with our parents, rotten words can do damage. And the power of words that build up. Now, there was a season of time where I felt like I was getting pelted with words, and I was really discouraged. And a friend of mine who came out here physically to encourage me, and oftentimes on the phone, his name is Kevin York. I remember him one time, him saying, because I just felt like I couldn't go on anymore, and he just said, Greg, you will make it through this. You will. God is with you. And he will see you through this. And you may not think you're doing a good job of leading, and others may have said that, but you are doing a good job of leading this. You need to hold the course. You will make it through this. I can't tell you how much that changed everything. And I felt like this, and at the end of the conversation, I felt like wind had been put back into my soul, that God had given me a grace gift through this man who sought to build me up, not according to his desire, but according to my need in the moment. And then he said, Greg, I just got to tell you this and never forget this. I know it's difficult now, but after this storm passes, there will be a worse one right around the corner. And he laughed, and I laughed too. It was funny, and it was true. Now, let me ask you this question. As we kind of pull this all together, what kind of person do you want to be? What kind of person do you want to be? Do you want to be a fault finder, or do you want to be a hope builder? What kind of person? We get to choose. Paul says we get to choose. We get to guard, and we get to watch what comes out of our mouth. What do you want to be? Fault finder or hope builder? Now, the problem, I'm just going to be straight up with you. The problem is because we are sinful, our tendency is to be a fault finder. We just have the tendency to find all the things that don't work and all the things that aren't right and all the people. The reason why that's happening to you is because you did this, and we just have the ability to do that really easily. right? We can tear down, we can criticize the reason why. I can't believe they're doing that. I can't believe she's spending money on that. She didn't have the money to do that. I can't believe she says she loves Jesus. It looks like from her selfie that she loves herself really more than she loves Jesus. I can't believe that family's taking that vacation. Who are they to spend that much money? I can't believe they're driving that. I can't believe they're living in that. I can't believe that's the way they train their kids. They might as well just skip school, send them straight to prison the way they're training their kids, because that's not the way I'm training my kids, right? And we could go on. We're good at this, right? We can walk into our workplace and go, you know what, she didn't know how to run a meeting. I can't believe she's boss. And look, I'm going to tell you this from personal experience. This is before pastoring this church, I have been the associate pastor of 3 church plants and of 4 churches. And I'll tell you why that is. It's because I have so much pride in me that God said, I'm going to put you in the place where you're going to be tempted to be proud and arrogant and go, I could do a better job than that. Because I know you never think that. I can do a better job than that if I were in that place. You know what that is. That may be true, but you know what that is. That's just arrogance. That's just judgment. And God says, look, I'm going to let you be the second man here. And I started to say, I'm going to do a better job than him. Next, we're going to go here. By then, I was like, I'm not going to do a better job than him. God pounds out the pride and the arrogance, and he pounds in us humility. Again, if you're in your 20s and your 30s, it's really important because you're going to go through this. And you're going to wonder at times why this is happening, because you are going to have bad bosses. And you're going to go, man, that boss sucks. Da, 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 da. You know what, in hindsight, you're going to realize is that God used that bad boss to do something inside of you and to develop a humility and a perspective inside of you that you didn't have previous to that. Because you were just an arrogant little punk, right? And you guys are supposed to laugh at that, okay? It's not funny. Right? And so God does that. He works in our life. And you know what this makes us? If you read through the Bible, who were the ones that were always finding fault with Jesus? It wasn't the people who had need and saw their need. It was always the Pharisees, right? It was always the religious elite. It was always those who in their own self-righteousness had their life all together, were doing pretty much everything the law said. Those were the ones who were most judgmental and critical about other people. You know who in the Bible is described as not just the deceiver, not just the father of lies, not just the one who comes to kill, steal, and destroy, but the accuser. His actual name, Satan, means accuser. He's the one who finds fault. That's our enemy, the devil. So think about this. When we are critical and have a critical spirit towards other people, we are just like the Pharisees. We are just like the devil. We are trying to do the same thing, which doesn't make any sense. And that's why Paul is saying, you guys are people of God, so don't do that. Don't go down this road. So why do we do this? Why do we do this? And there are many reasons. You guys can come and share with me your own. I'll just give you a couple, though, and I think they work in tandem. Number one is we just tend to be really prideful. We think that we know better than everybody else. We just do. We're superior. I know better. My way is the best way, and do it my way. The second thing I think that really plays into this is we also are very insecure. And we tend to find fault and criticize the very thing that we see in us, in other people, because when we're able to tear them down in that same issue, it makes us feel a little bit better about our weakness. And so some of it's driven by our insecurity. Some of it is driven by just bitterness. If there's bitterness, if there's unforgiveness in your heart, we will tend to take that out on other people around us, especially if that unforgiveness is due to words that were spoken to you, over you, or about you. We'll take that same thing into our marriages. We'll take that same thing into our dating relationships. We'll take that same thing into our friends, into our culture, and that bitterness will come out. And it'll come out in the guise of sarcasm or cynicism, but there's probably an area there that may need forgiveness, and we'll bring that into those different areas of our life. One of the big reasons why we do this is because of ignorance. We just don't know. And if we understood, we would approach somebody with a little bit more compassion and humility, but because we don't know, we just make judgment, right? So when I was about 24 years old, I had read enough books about parenting, and I had read enough books about marriage. Honestly, I was the man. I was an expert in parenting and marriage. In fact, I can remember seeing that 2-year-old. You ever done this? You see that 2-year-old at Walmart in the candy aisle throwing the fit, and you're not going to say it, but you're thinking, well, some of you do say it, but you go, when I'm a parent, that ain't going to happen. I'm not negotiating with terrorists. I am getting the job done. And so you walk past that 2-year-old, and there's just judgment. It's not the word you say, but it's your body posture. It's all over you. And then I had a baby. And then that baby turned into a 2-year-old in the aisle of Long's Drugs. And that baby wanted a toy really bad. And then that's when you realize, oh, I was just ignorant before. There is no negotiating with terrorists. You give them whatever they want. I will give you all the candy on this rack. I will buy you a unicorn. Unicorns exist? No, I'll buy you one. Whatever you want. Just don't do this right now. Don't embarrass me. Get them in the car as quick as you can, and then you come away with understanding and empathy, and you're less critical. A lot of it is just ignorance. The bottom line is, whatever the issue, have you ever looked at a critical person? It doesn't matter how much money they make or how successful they are in the world's eyes. You ever gone, I want to be just like that? I have not. I have not. I don't want to be somebody. I don't want to go to my grave as knowing, hey, that's the guy that, man, he was really good at just tearing people down. That's pretty awesome. None of us really want that. So we have to choose, what do we want to be, a fault finder or hope builder? Now, Paul was one of the chief hope builders in the Scriptures. In fact, this is what Paul wrote, Romans 15, verse 13. He says, he calls God the God of hope. May the God of hope give you joy and peace as you trust him, so that you may be filled with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. Paul's desire was to see God's people filled with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. So consequently, he was a hope builder. In fact, if you read his writings, they're just laced with hope. He doesn't shy away from the difficult situations. He doesn't shy away from sin, but he always gives them hope. And so as you read it, in fact, you can just read through Romans 8 and you just see it. It's filled with hope. Therefore, there's now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. No more condemnation. Man, that's hopeful. In fact, the Spirit of Christ, if he lives in you, he will also give life to your mortal body through his Spirit who indwells you. Man, that gives me hope. He will be with you and he will help you even in your weaknesses. You can call God your Father, not just your Father, you can call him Daddy. That is hope-filled. He says Jesus lives forever to make intercession for you and I. Forever, Jesus lives to make intercession. Therefore, if God is for us, who dare be against us? And if you're in Christ, you are more than a conqueror in Christ Jesus. Neither death, nor life, nor demons, nor angels, nor anything can separate you from the love of God. Man, that gives me incredible hope. Paul was a hope builder. In fact, Jesus is called in the Scriptures our hope. In Titus, he's called our good hope. And Peter calls him our living hope. We have this thing that we've been born again to. It is a living hope that came about through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. Because of that, Jesus is now our living hope. So, we just choose, and it's an easy choice. Even though our tendency is to be a fault finder, man, the Pharisees and the devil, they're fault finders. That's all they do. They look for things to accuse. On the other hand, Paul was a hope builder. Jesus is our living hope. So it's a no-brainer. We want to be hope builders, right? Yeah. We want to be hope. We want to build a community of hope and speak with hope and not use our words to tear down, but use our words to build others up according to their needs, that they may receive grace, those who hear it. And let no unwholesome word come out of our mouth. Hope builders, right? Hope builders. So what do you want to be? So can I just give you a real practical thing to try this week? Just try this week. Especially if you go, you know what? And to be honest, it's totally good. You just honestly go, you know what? I do. I'm in this habit, man. This is really hard for me to not look at something and just like want to cut it down. Just declare this next week a critical-free week. Just try it. You go, well, I don't have the problem. Then great. You won't have a problem doing it. Just try it. Just try it this week. Try it. Just and see how many times maybe that temptation to let something out that shouldn't come out will want to come out, and then not let it come out. Let no unwholesome word come out of your mouth. You have no idea what this might be doing to your marriage, to your spouse, to his or her self-esteem, to the intimacy that you could be sharing. You have no idea what this could be doing to your children. You have no idea what this could be doing to your work environment. Just one critical word can stick and do damage in somebody's soul. On the other hand, you also probably have no idea how one word spoken to build somebody else up. Greg, you're going to make it through this. Don't give up. God is with you. He will see you through this. You have no idea how much that word can be used to encourage, and how God can take that, turn it into a gift in somebody's soul, infuse life and hope and faith inside of them who are willing or on the verge of quitting because you spoke a word of encouragement. You have no idea. So what if? Yeah, your wife, she may not be the most organized. She may not be the best cook, but you know what? She loves your family. And she imparts to the kids. And she is there and she is faithful. What if you just went and said, honey, I appreciate you so much. You are so faithful, and I appreciate all that you've given to this family and to our kids, and the way that you invest your life and you sow yourself. And I see the effort that you're giving, and you look good doing it, and you are awesome, honey. And your husband may not win handyman of the month. In fact, he may not. If you ask him for a hammer, he might bring you a screwdriver. That's how he may not. But what if you saw him trying, and you said, you know what? I appreciate you trying to cut that lawn, and you look so good in those black socks, and you are giving your best. And honey, I appreciate the way that you sacrifice and you serve this family, and I appreciate you so much. And what if you just held back a little bit, and your kids, they don't know where the laundry bin is. They don't know what it means to wash a dish. They don't know. But you just said, you know what, son? I see your heart, and I appreciate your effort, and I'm so proud of you. And God has great plans for you, and He's going to do great things through your life. And I see the way that you go after everything, and you find that thing about them that makes them unique, and you begin to call it out of them, and you say, God's got a great destiny. And I can see the way that when you grab onto something, you don't let go of something, and God is going to use that, and He's going to develop that, and you are fantastic. And son, daughter, I am so proud of you. What if? What if in your workplace, you went in there, and yeah, your boss doesn't do everything right, and yeah, there's situations that are out of control, but what if you go, you know what, because they're laboring under it, I see the effort that you're giving, and I really appreciate that. I appreciate that you've not quit on this team. I appreciate that you've not quit on this assignment. I appreciate that you try and do everything that you do to the best of your capacity. I really appreciate that, and I just want to let you know I am on your side, and anything I can do to help you, I want to do that to help you because I believe in you. You have no idea how the power of an encouraging word can build hope and life into somebody. The worship team's going to come and join me this morning. Because I don't know about you, but I don't want to be a fault finder. And I know that is my tendency. So I have to work against it, and I have to let God change my heart. I want to be a hope builder. I want to be somebody who points people to their eternal hope, to Jesus, the living hope. That's what I want to do. I want to be able to use my words to say you've got a hope. No matter what you've done, how far you've strayed, there is somebody who can forgive you. I don't want to dwell on all the things that aren't and all the things that I'm not and they're not. I want to dwell on all the things that Jesus did to forgive me. And when we do that, here's what happens. We become humble. We see the magnitude of our sin, the huge enormity of our criticalness and of our need, and the great expansive magnitude of God's love and grace and forgiveness towards you and I. Who am I? And this is why Jesus said, who are you to try and pull a speck out of somebody else's eye when there's this big old log in your own eye? Don't you remember the same thing you're criticizing is the same thing that I'm forgiving? And so Jesus would say, I want you to be a hope builder. I want you to point people to the one who can truly give them an eternal hope. Point them to me. The God who forgives, the God who loves, the God who saves.